My name is Mike Love, and I'm a part of the preaching team here at Momentum.
And I'm our student ministry director here.
Yeah, so we are excited to be here. Thanks for joining us in person. Thanks for joining us online. We're so excited to get to do this. So a little bit about us, as Lauren and I have now been married for 8 years, and we have 2 little boys, Luke and James, 2 little blonde-haired, curly boys that you will see running around hopefully soon all over the place. They don't stop, ever. And we've gotten the chance to be a part of the planning team here. We've gotten a chance to lead Mo groups together, host Mo groups. But most importantly, I think our favorite thing is serving in the K-5 Mo Kids ministry area. I think we really enjoy that. Lauren really is the teacher there. I just kind of get kids riled up. We have a good time down there. However, with all of that being said, all of that almost didn't happen because of poor communication, because of a lack of good communication. Now, for Lauren and I, we both went to Kent State University, but we didn't really know each other until late in college, when we were on a trip together with this group. We were on a trip in Florida. And as we were there, that's where we met for the first time, and I noticed that Lauren, just everywhere I was, Lauren was always there. Like anytime there was an open seat next to me, Lauren would always fill it. If we were in a group together, small groups, anything like that, Lauren was always in those groups. So it had me thinking, like, man, this girl must really like me. Like, she must have a huge crush on me.
See, I don't really remember it that way. For me, I just think there were a lot of open seats near him, and I just tended to fill them. So that's not really how I remember it, but it's cool.
Yeah, so whatever the reason, I had this confidence. I thought, this girl surely loves me, so I'm going to ask her out. You know, and I'm going to do it in a very sympathetic and compassionate and meaningful way. So I did. I asked her out on our first date.
I wasn't positive that he was asking me out on a date, because what he actually did was he asked me if I wanted to get sandwiches and watch basketball. So I thought, maybe, are there going to be other people there? Maybe that's what I'll determine whether or not if it's a date. You know, if there's other people there, no. If we're by ourselves, maybe it's a date. But either way, I actually couldn't go that particular night because I had plans. So I said, I would love to go, however, I can't because I have plans.
Yeah, so I put myself out there. I was extremely vulnerable, and I asked her out on this date, and she said no. So I was shot down. I thought this relationship is over, and I was very upset about that. I was very sad.
I was pretty positive that when we got back to Kent State, we were going on a date. But, apparently he didn't think the same thing.
No way was I going to ask again. I was shot down. So I thought everything was over. Luckily, we had some friends that were kind of mutual friends, and we were able to, we finally went on that first date, and things worked out.
And then once we started dating, we obviously started talking more, and we would talk on the phone most days. Usually before we would go to bed, we'd talk on the phone. And it was at that point that I learned that Mike is a terrible phone communicator. He's one of those people who holds the phone like here and then out like this, which I didn't know until I saw him talking on the phone. But it also sounds like this on the phone. And so I got to the point we'd be in a conversation where I'd be like, what? What? And I don't know about you, but there's only so many times that you can say what before you're like, okay, now this is just ridiculous. So for me, the limit was 3. I'd say what 3 times, and if I still didn't know what the heck he said, I would just be like, yeah, sure. And that would be that. So, yeah, terrible phone communicator, this one.
Yeah, so I just thought Lauren was really agreeable. But miscommunication, it can lead to difficult or unpredictable outcomes. It can lead to things you don't expect.
Yeah, there's a European couple where the guy was named Finley McAfee, and he lived in Edinburgh, and his girlfriend lived in Paris, and they decided that they were going to surprise one another. So he got on a plane, and he flew to Paris, and she got on a plane, and she flew to Edinburgh, and they ended up actually just in other cities without each other. Not great communication there.
Yes, or as any male my age can readily recall, the time when Stephanie Tanner on Full House flew to Auckland, New Zealand instead of Oakland, California, all to follow a boy. So these miscommunications, they happen. These things happen, and it's not just on TV either. In fact, companies, they say they lose millions of dollars every year because of poor communication.
Yeah, and miscommunication can lead to stress, poor morale, lack of connection, frustration, loneliness. All of this can come when we don't know how to communicate.
Yeah, poor communication is also the leading cause for divorce. Because you go somewhere else for support. You feel like you can't talk to your spouse. You aren't sharing your successes or your challenges. And you start to get to the point where you feel like the person you're with, you don't even really know who they are anymore. They're just a roommate.
And poor communication can also end friendships. It's not just related to marriage. You can lose track of what your friends are doing. And when you're not communicating all the time, it becomes harder to relate to somebody because you don't really even know them anymore. And maybe you feel a little bit used because you feel like the only time you get contacted by a friend is when they need something from you. And that doesn't help to support or build a relationship. Or maybe you feel left out because when you're on Facebook, I don't even know if Facebook's cool anymore. I can't keep up. But either way, you're scrolling through Facebook and you're looking through things and you're like, wow, this person is getting together with other people. They're having fun. Why aren't I invited? And you start to have these thoughts come into your head where you're like, I don't even really know this person anymore. And it might boil down to a lack of communication.
Yeah, in fact, miscommunication even happened in the Bible. In the book of Joshua, and that's the story of where the Israelites, they were slaves in Egypt, and then they were leaving Egypt to head to the Promised Land, and they were led by Moses. But in the book of Joshua now, Moses has passed away, and now Joshua, he's the leader. And as he's leading them, they're getting to this Promised Land. And the Israelites, they had these 12 tribes, and each tribe had kind of their own land that was allotted to them. Everybody had their own place, and everybody was excited for that. Everything was ordained by God. Things were good. But as they got there, there were 2.5 tribes, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. They decided, you know what, we want this land over here, a little bit of ways away. So they made a plan with the other tribes. Everything was good. Everything, again, they felt God agreed. They felt this made sense. But then those 2.5 tribes, they get to their other land. And when they got there, they said, you know what, we're a little bit far away from our buddies. Maybe we should build this altar so everybody remembers that we worship the same God as them. So they did that. They built this altar to God there. And the other tribes, they heard about this, and they were mad. They thought, what are these guys doing? Here we traveled, we went through all these challenges, all these hardships, and now they're doing this without us knowing, and are they going to go behind our back? What's the problem here? Why are they doing this? So they decided, well, we're going to gear up. We're going to take all our army, and we're going to go there, and we're going to tear that tower down. We're going to destroy them. We're going to destroy all these people that we were so close to. We're going to take them out. Luckily, they decided, you know what? Let's send somebody over first to talk about it. Let's figure out what's going on. And when they did that, they sent someone over, and they realized, hey, these guys are worshiping the same God as we are. Like, yeah, these are the people that we traveled for 40 years with, that we went through these challenges with. These are still our buddies. This is still our family. And they decided, you know what? It's crazy to think that we're going to destroy them. And they went on their separate way, and everything was good. But had they not talked, there would have been this war, this great struggle, death, killing. Poor communication, it can cause battles that we don't need to fight. It can lead to trouble that we don't need.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at Proverbs 12:18, just the first part of it right now. And it reads, "The words of the reckless pierce like swords." Man, it is so easy to pierce other people with our words, to use our words like swords, to lash out, to make fun of, to yell at, to cuss at, whatever it is. It's so easy to do that. And sometimes it's even easier to do that to the people that we love. And I think it might be because we have this assumption that they're always going to forgive us. And so we feel more comfortable lashing out to the people that we love in a way that we probably don't with our friends or maybe our acquaintances. And that can be hurtful to our relationships. Or maybe when we feel hurt, we feel attacked, and it's in those moments that we use our words like swords. And it is even easier to do this virtually. Through social media or email or text, we have this courage online that we don't have when we're having one-on-one conversations. And I don't mean a good kind of courage. I mean the kind of courage that takes away maybe the how that person would have responded. You can't see the look on their face when what you says hurts them because it's through a screen. And so you get this courage to just lash out. Because when we communicate, there are times when our words can be our weapons.
Yeah. And while words matter, words alone account for only a small part of communication. Now, for me, one of the benefits of doing a sermon with your wife is she does all the research, and I love that. And one scholar suggested that words account for only 7% of the communication process. Tone of voice, inflection, that accounts for 38%. And the remaining 55% is found in facial expressions, posture, gestures. So what we say, how we say it, how we act, our behaviors, it all matters. Whether we question those percentages or not, all of those different things come into play when we communicate.
And we can choose to communicate that way with our words being like swords, or we can take a look at the second half of Proverbs 12:18. And that says that the tongue of the wise brings healing. The wise don't get into battles that they don't need to fight. So what does it look like to be wise in how we communicate? How do we do that?
So today we're going to look at 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 9. And we're going to look at that in our Bibles because I think that gives us a blueprint of how the wise communicate, of how we should communicate with one another. Now, this passage is written by a guy named Peter. And Peter, he was a disciple of Jesus, which all that means is it's a fancy word for he was a student of Jesus. As Jesus is walking around on earth, he was following Jesus around. He saw Jesus perform these miracles. He got to ask Jesus questions. Jesus would speak truth into his life, and Peter got to be a part of that. Now, Peter, what's interesting about him, though, is he's also known as the disciple who'd put his foot in his mouth. He was the disciple that'd be quick to say something, quick to do something rash. He was quick to always do those things. That was Peter. However, from following Jesus, Jesus changed him. And he actually became this wise communicator, this great communicator, who really became the preacher for the disciples. So we want to pull this verse apart because there's a lot about communication here. Again, not just our words, but how we act, our behaviors. So 1 Peter 3, 8 through 9 reads like this. Finally, all of you, live in harmony with one another. Be sympathetic. Love as brothers. Be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult, but with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing.
So if we take a look at that first part of the verse, it says live in harmony with one another. This is not always easy, right? It is not always easy to live in harmony with the people that are around us. And you might have those people in your life that you just are waiting to disagree with. Like you are waiting to argue with them. Maybe it's a family member who you just don't agree with very much, and you're always getting into disagreements. Or maybe it's somebody in social media from the other political party who you are just waiting, you're itching, you're waiting for them to say something so that you can snap back with something equally angry, right? Or maybe it's other sports fans, like for me, Steelers fans. I really have to work on that. It's prayer, right? It might be those types of people. You wait for them to say something so that you can pounce, because you are ready to do that. You are ready to attack those people who disagree with you.
Or for me, I love my wife, I love my kids, but sometimes I've just had a rough day. And you get home, and you're just waiting for someone to say something or do something. You're just waiting to kind of lash out, to take your frustration that you feel like you can't take out on anyone else or anywhere else. You're just waiting for those moments because it's just so easy to do. It's so easy to take out that frustration on others.
And what if you instead of seeking out those people who you just want to disagree with, what if instead we looked for common ground with them? Because in any type of relationship, it's not all about you. You need to take the time to listen to what the other person wants, to what they need, to what they find to be important. Learn about what the other person is passionate about and talk about those things. Make a connection, build a bridge, and find common ground.
Yeah, whether it's your husband or wife, your boyfriend, girlfriend, a friend, someone at work, find those things that you can use for that connection. Find those important things. But also find those fun things too. Guys, that may mean watching Gilmore Girls, so you can talk to your wife about Logan Huntsberger and how he ruined the show, or who Rory should have ended up with.
Which is?
Marty.
Of course, thank you. So, ladies, this could mean engaging in what your husband or your partner is interested in. For me, this was running. I'm one of those people who really believes that you should only run if you're being chased. But Mike is an avid runner. He runs marathons. He runs most every day. But we had some great moments together when I decided to try to take up running, when I decided to try to embrace it. We did it together. It was fun. Mike was really patient with me. We'd be on the trail, and I know that I was slowing him down, and I'd be like, just go ahead of me, I'm all right. And he'd be like, no, you're good. He'd give me encouragement. And so I realized that it was something that we could do together, and I had fun. Now, I'm nowhere near a marathon runner, but I did complete my first 5K a couple years ago, and I actually really enjoyed it. Thank you. Yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed it. Now, part of what made it fun for me was that I ran it at Cedar Point, which was good.
Which I don't enjoy Cedar Point.
Yeah, see? So, it's like a give and a take, right? We do it together. But finding common ground doesn't mean you have to become a clone of the other person. You don't have to do everything that your best friend does. You don't have to love everything that your spouse loves. But if you do make an effort to find common ground, you make an effort to enjoy what the other person enjoys, it can strengthen your relationship.
Yeah, finding common ground means listening first. Listening to what that other person is saying before you launch right into your own words. James chapter 1, verse 19 says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." A book I recently read called Leadership on the Line, it talks about the importance of getting on the balcony. And what that means is when you're in a tough conversation with someone, or maybe it's a contentious conversation, it's the ability to kind of pause that conversation in your own mind and kind of take a bird's eye view of what's going on. Get on the balcony and kind of look down. And kind of look down on thinking, well, what's happening here? What's this person really want? What is this person really saying? And taking time to pause before you say your piece, before you go into it, and really taking the time to think about what you're going to say. However, even though I'm saying take that time to kind of look out from the balcony and all those different things, that doesn't mean just always holding your opinions back. Sometimes people need to hear things, even if it's what they don't want to hear. For instance, for us, that happened not too long ago when I told Lauren, I thought, you know what, I think I could finish the basement by myself. I bet I could figure out how to do this. I think it'd be relaxing. I could take my time. I'd be cheaper. I think it'd look great when it's done, too.
This is when I felt like it was necessary to remind Mike, in grace and love, of course, that while he has many, many, many talents that I greatly admire, unfortunately, any type of handiwork is not one of them. So I had to remind him about the time when he tried to replace my brake light, and that resulted in him taking a 2-mile run around the neighborhood in frustration, and while he was gone, I replaced the brake light. Or about the time when he tried to remove the wallpaper in our kitchen, which resulted us needing a brand new kitchen wall, installed by professionals.
Got that wallpaper down there.
Yeah, we did. We did.
And thank God she reminded me of those things. I mean, I'd be in the basement right now angry, and nothing would be accomplished. So thank God she reminded me of those things.
So the next part of the verse that we're going to look at is be sympathetic. Be sympathetic. And another way of thinking about being sympathetic is to have empathy. And empathy is the ability to understand and share in the feelings of others. When you are able to think about how a person is feeling and why that may influence how or even what they're communicating with you, the more likely you are going to be to respond with kindness or with grace. Because sometimes it's not easy to think the best of people. Sometimes we have a chip on our shoulder where we think everybody is attacking us, when in reality, a lot of what people say doesn't have a whole lot to do with their own feelings and struggles as it does you. It has so much more to do with what they're feeling, what they're going through, than it has to do with you. You might just be getting the brunt of it.
And part of biblical communication is learning to listen, not just to words, but feelings, and to convey that you understand, that you can understand what's going on. In fact, we should be affected by the feelings of others. And Jesus modeled this for us, by coming down, by experiencing pain and struggle for us and going through those things for us. For instance, when a friend of Jesus' died and he was with the family, Jesus wept. He cried with the family. He expressed that compassion, that empathy.
So we need to think about what our friends, what our spouses, what our coworkers, what our family, we need to think about what are they going through. It says in the Bible that as followers of Jesus, we need to rejoice with those who rejoice. We need to weep with those who weep. Maybe they've had a bad day and they're frustrated about something else completely, and it comes out in the way that they talk to you. If we allow the feelings and the sufferings of others to impact our own feelings, we are able to be sensitive to how others feel. We can put ourselves in their shoes, and this will positively influence how we communicate with others. We might be able to see that the harsh word that was just said to us has nothing to do with us, but it has everything to do with them. This is something that Mike and I try really hard to apologize to each other for as soon as it happens. So if we snap at each other and we know, hey, that didn't have anything to do with you, I was frustrated by, I don't know, fill in the blank. I was frustrated by the kids at the moment. I was frustrated because dinner isn't going along as quickly as I wanted it to. I got to get this dinner made, and I'm frustrated, and you came at me with something, and I snapped, right? Or maybe because my knee is sore because I run 85 miles a day, and so I snapped at you. Whatever the case may be, we try to apologize right away and say, hey, sorry, that wasn't about you. I didn't mean to snap.
And this whole idea is repeated later in the verse when it says to be compassionate. It's clear how important this piece of wisdom is to us having healthy and godly communication with others. The next part of the verse is to love as brothers. And to me, that's a reminder that you're on the same team. That even though you may not see eye to eye all the time, or you may have different ideas of what to do and what to do next with your spouse or with a friend or your Mo group or whoever it is, it's the understanding that you guys both have good intentions, that you both want good things. You know, Romans 12:18 says, if it's as possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. That means doing what you can to make peace. That's doing what you can to know that this person has good things in mind too.
And even going back to what Mike talked about earlier with that research, tone of voice and gentleness in communication can really make all the difference. Think about asking a very simple question to your spouse. Did you empty the dishwasher? Think about how tone can be the difference between a simple question and the on-ramp to a fight, right? You know what I'm talking about? Hey, did you empty the dishwasher by any chance? Did you empty the dishwasher, right? Exact same question, different tone of voice can lead to two very different outcomes. And it says in Proverbs 15:1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So think about that. Think about that when you're talking with somebody. Even if you're frustrated about something, a gentle answer is going to lead to peace. Whereas that harsh word, it's just going to stir things up.
Yeah, and a good way to build up that team mentality is to do something together. More specifically, to serve together. You know, find something that you both feel like you can do, and then do it together. For me and Lauren, that was serving in Mo Kids, which is awesome. And for me, I never thought I would say that because I didn't really have a desire to do that, but Lauren did. You know, I didn't think I'd be good there. I didn't feel like that was something I'd enjoy. But as we did it, I really enjoyed being with the kids, but I also really enjoyed doing that with my wife. I really enjoyed seeing Lauren lead, seeing her on stage and doing those things. Find those places where you can serve together, those things that you can partner together with, so then you can talk about those things. It gives you something to talk about what your next step is. And it doesn't just have to be your spouse. It could be your buddies. It could be your Mo group, whatever it is. But find that purpose. Find those things you can do together.
The next part of the verse says, be humble. And this is something we've already kind of talked about, right? The concept of it's not all about you. I mean, this continues to come up anytime you're talking about a relationship, right? I think to the point we should all just agree to get it tattooed somewhere, I don't know, like across our forehead. It's not all about you, right? We need this daily reminder because selfishness is going to hinder our communication. We need to turn from that selfishness because it will impact our communication, and then by default, it will impact our relationships. If you're living for your own self-fulfillment, and that's all you're thinking about, is yourself first, and not about others, you're going to build a barrier to healthy communication. And it's not going to allow you to feel that empathy that we described earlier. You're not going to be able to feel that empathy. It says in Philippians 2:3-5, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Your attitude should be the same of that of Christ. And if you were to continue reading in this verse in Philippians, you would hear just all this description of the humility of Christ. And the reason for that is because Christ sets that example for us, that example of humility.
And also a part of humility is knowing that you're not always right. And that can be hard. That can hurt my pride. And pride causes me not to be able to admit when I'm wrong or to accept correction and instead to get angry when I feel challenged. And that's a recipe for disaster in any sort of communication. Humility can also tell me that I don't need to be perfect. For me, I have this belief that I can't show Lauren where I'm struggling or where I'm challenged. I want Lauren to see me as perfect. And it's really hard for me because I feel like if I show weakness, if I show where I had a hard day, or I show where I was challenged, I feel like I'm no longer a man in Lauren's eyes. However, I know now that Lauren, she wants to know about my day. Like, she wants to hear where I'm challenged. She wants to hear what I'm going through because she wants to help me go through it. She wants to do it with me.
And not only that, but I just want to feel connected to Mike. You know, I'm a big nerd. I love to engage in intellectual conversations. I like deep conversations, talking about experiences, hearing vulnerabilities, and what Mike is going through. Hearing about those things helps me to feel connected to him on a deeper level. I actually thrive on that type of communication in all of my relationships. And so when it's not provided to me, I don't feel as connected to him. And this actually really intensified for me when I became a stay-at-home mom. You know, I am really extroverted. I like people. I like to talk to people. And often at the end of the day, when I've spent the entire day with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, I'm starved for some sort of communication that doesn't revolve around Blippi. I mean, I want to talk about something else. And Mike, on the other hand, is pretty tapped out.
Yeah, I'm an introvert. You know, people can overwhelm me. I'm ready. When I come home, I could do without talking. And it's really easy for me to come home and disengaged, you know, just to not connect with anyone and just to stay away from everyone. That's just me.
And not only that, but we're both educators. Mike is a principal, and I was a teacher before I started staying at home. And not being active in the field anymore, but obviously still being interested in it, I'm curious about what's going on. I want to know about what's going on in his day. I want to have conversations about what happened in the office. And then I want to complete that conversation with some nerdy analysis of what it means for the future of education. And Mike's like, dude, can we just watch Netflix? Like, enough. You know, and so we have to learn that balance. We have to figure out what the other one needs. You know, I need to realize that Mike's hitting a wall, and he needs to just turn on the TV, and we need to just relax. And Mike, on the other hand, sometimes needs to realize, like, Lauren really wants to have this conversation. Like, I really need to engage in this conversation with her. And once we find that balance, we help to communicate with each other better and build our relationship.
Yeah, it's so important that you find that rhythm, that you find what works for you, to know when communication works best. Another example, we've learned that once my jammies are on, it's not a good time to have a deep conversation. It's not the right time.
I think that we've learned that Mike doesn't do well with, you know, when he needs to sleep. It's something that's been well established. In fact, the other night, he woke up on the couch from a dead sleep, and I was trying to coax him to go upstairs to go to bed, and he kept asking for a Pez dispenser. I'm like, what? Like, he was just, I don't know, a Pez dispenser? What the heck do you need that for? So obviously, once I saw that he was delirious and speaking nonsense, I really, of course, leaned into it and kind of prodded it a little bit and continued to laugh at him. So he went to bed kind of angry at me that night. But he just wanted his Pez dispenser. I don't know. But that's what you need to know that about the person you're in a relationship with. When is it good to have a conversation? Late at night or really late? It's different for different people. For Mike, it's 8. You know, whatever the case is. But those are the times when we know not to have a deep conversation. So the next part of the verse says, do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. It's really tempting, and it's really satisfying to want to respond when somebody makes you angry very quickly without thinking, with that snappy response that surely is going to make you feel vindicated, that great comeback. I usually don't think of those fast enough anyways, but I know that after I've had a conversation with somebody, sometimes I let it go through my head, like, oh, this is what I would have said. Yeah, that would have been good. I was showing them, right? And I'm thinking through all that stuff. Or sometimes somebody makes me mad, and I'm driving in the car, and by myself, I just start talking to them like I'm in front of them. And I start just saying what I would have said, and it feels really good, and I get it all out. People probably think I'm crazy as they're driving by. Or hopefully, they think I'm listening to some angry music, like Pink. I don't know. You might not think Pink is angry music, but for me, that's about as angry as it gets. So I got my Pink on. I'm getting out all my frustrations. But here's the thing about that. As I start to do that, as I start to talk to the imaginary people in my car and get out my frustrations, I start to realize a couple of things. I either realize that the entire thing that I'm mad about is pretty silly, and it's not actually even worth bringing up because it's kind of dumb. Or I realize that I'm wrong, and this is the one that's hard, right? Sometimes you're going through that in your head, you're going through it, or if you're crazy like me, out loud in the car, and you're like, wait, maybe I'm not right in this situation. Like, maybe this other person is right. Or you start to really just see the situation from the other person's point of view. And it's uncanny how it happens for me, and I do truly think it's God. It's like a little worm that gets into my head, like asking me these questions, like, well, what if they did that because of this? I'd be like, no, I don't want to hear that right now. I want to be angry. I want to be angry at this person, right? But as you go through those things, you start to see that, wow, maybe when I answer for real, I'm going to be able to answer with way more grace and way more love than I ever would have before. Because what happens when we respond to anger with anger? For real. Escalation. That's typically what happens. Now our conversation has spiraled out of control, and it's more likely going to cause damage that didn't need to happen. And what have we really accomplished at the end of the day? An angry versus angry conversation usually results in very little. Poor communication causes battles that we don't need to fight.
Yeah, Romans 14:19 says, "Let us make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification." And edification, that means to uplift, to move someone forward spiritually, mentally, emotionally. It means to help someone win. And this is especially difficult when we've been hurt or insulted. And when we respond with more hateful words, like Lauren says, it just leads to that more escalation. All of our words, but especially those spoken during hurtful times or disagreement, they have an impact. Let's let our words be used to build others up always. Now, it doesn't mean that you can never share something hard with someone else or express displeasure. It just means that you do it in such a way that it builds the other person up and doesn't tear them down. Ephesians 4:29. Okay. Ephesians 4:29 says, "Do not let unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only as what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that may be to benefit those who listen." Perfect. So sometimes that hard truth, it's helpful. But take your time to present it with that love and grace. Take time to pray about it, to pray for, what are the right words? What are the right things to say? What's the right thing to do? Also, pray for when is that right time going to come to do it? And being intentional with that right time. It's not a good time when you're angry. It's not a good time when your jammies are on and all those different things.
So how do we accomplish all of this? How do we live out the wisdom that's laid out for us in 1 Peter 3:8-9? The easy answer, and I mean easy as in it's easy to come to but not easy to do, and that's we need Jesus. That's the answer to that question. We need Jesus.
Peter, in many ways, in this early introduction in the Bible, he was that guy who was quick to put his foot in his mouth, quick to say things, quick to do rash things. However, Jesus changed him. And Jesus was able to help him, and he became this great leader and was able to effectively communicate in a godly way. And the best way to do that is through strengthening our own relationships with God.
The more connected we are to God in our daily lives, the more that pours into the health of our relationships. Because what comes out of our mouths is dependent on what we are putting into our hearts and into our souls. So if we are spending time in the Bible, if we're allowing it to change us, to mold us, to change our thoughts and our desires and our behaviors, that will pour into our relationships. And that will impact how we communicate. But on the other hand, the more we fill our hearts and our minds with things that are not of God, the more we surround ourselves with things that are not of God, the more we will respond in a way that is not like God. The more we will respond with anger, with deceit, with selfishness, with malice. It says in Luke 6:45, "A good man brings good things out of the good that is stored up in his heart. And an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of."
The health of our relationship with God is an indicator of our ability to communicate in a godly way. We need him as the center of our life and the center of our relationships. So our first real action step today is to spend time with God daily, to make that a priority, whatever that looks like for you. I think taking a chunk of the Bible, reading a little bit each day, however small or large that is, but finding time to do that. And again, Matthew's a great place to start. But finding those things that you can read, praying, spending time talking to God, spending time in reflection, meditation, maybe it's journaling or going for a prayer walk, whatever works for you. But I think it's that commitment to growing in your relationship with God daily.
Yeah, and also, Mike and I find that we communicate at our best when we are both communicating with and being poured into by other people. So I need other ladies in my life, and Mike needs other guys. We need people that can support us, encourage us, give us a kick in the butt if we need it, right? And those people can be your Mo group. Maybe it's an individual accountability partner that you have, someone who disciples you, which we call that here at Momentum our Batman and Robin relationships. But these relationships are important because they are the people who help to push us towards God, who help us to have that relationship on a daily basis with God. And it all comes back full circle.
Yeah, and our next action step is to find those people. Find who those people are going to be for you. You know, and it's not people who you go to vent about your spouse or vent about your friends, but it's people that you go and they help you to become better. They build into your life. And I know it's tough with the pandemic. I know it can be tough to connect with other people. But checking out those Mo groups, investing in one, that's so important. Even though it's virtual, I know on some of them that can be tough, but hey, you get to wear your jammies. But find those people that you can connect with. It's so important.
So now that we have broken down the wisdom from 1 Peter, I want to reread the verse in its entirety. And I want you specifically to think about the place where you struggle the most. I want you to have a little bit of self-reflection. So I'm going to read through 1 Peter 3, 8 through 9. It says, "Finally, all of you, live in harmony with one another. Be sympathetic. Love as brothers. Be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult, but with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing." So out of all the things listed in that verse, where do you struggle? Where do you specifically feel struggle when it comes to communicating in a godly way? And if you're having trouble figuring it out, I'll give you a little hint. Wherever you felt yourself needing to defend yourself in your mind while we were going through this is probably the place where God is trying to work on you. That is probably the place where you need to change the most, where you need to let God change you and mold you.
Yeah, Momentum, our motto is helping people win. We want everyone here to win by having godly relationships with the people in your life. Godly relationships are built on godly communication. Grow with God daily and watch that transform your relationships. So let's pray together.